Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Muslim Marriage Podcast, where we talk about healthy relationships from a Muslim lens. I'm Zara Hassan.
And I'm AJ, and let's get started.
Let's get started. On this week's episode, we have a question coming in again from the Muslim Marriage subreddit. It's a brother, and he says, "She doesn't think I will provide." Interesting title.
Interesting.
Yes,
Yeah.
because it's I will provide rather than I can provide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He says, Assalamu alaikum. I hope you're all doing well. I am a 23-year-old male hoping to get married to a 24-year-old female, but we had a discussion and she now thinks I don't have that provider instinct. This came about as we were having a conversation about the man's obligations and the woman's obligations, where I said, I would love to fully provide for everything for the sake of my obligations as ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the sake of getting married to her. But she felt that meant I didn't have that instinct within me to do that if I wasn't obliged to. We came to the scenario of if there was no obligation and we were both on the same salary, and after all bills and rent, one person's salary would only cover necessities and nothing else for fun or dates or saving, etc., that a man should want to pay for all necessities for his wife, even if she saves her whole salary, and that he should strive to do that regardless of obligation and how much he earns. I said perhaps to pay for 60-70% so that we could have a better quality of life and I could put money for our wants or future. I added that in the ideal scenario, I would earn more than that, so I am capable of fully providing for her, which I believed as my provider instinct, and doing all the extra stuff. However, she felt disappointed and is now saying I don't have the provider instinct and that she would want that in a man. I found this very baffling. I couldn't understand this point of view. I am aware of my obligations as a man in Islam and I am happy to fulfill them. However, in a set scenario without obligations, I would want her to contribute just a little if I was absolutely struggling. But she expects I am to take extra jobs working 60 plus hours a week in that scenario for the sake of providing, even if she also earned. I'm not really understanding her point. If anyone can explain it to me and teach me, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. So for the majority of the question, I was on the man's side.
Yes.
Until like the last two sentences, right?
Yeah.
Because in the last two sentences, she is correct. She apparently read him like a book.
Oh.
Just in the last two sentences.
Yeah.
However, the majority, like the whole time,
Yeah.
I was thinking, it doesn't have to be the man's instinct, right? It doesn't have to be the man's instinct to want to provide 100% for the woman.
Yeah.
The whole point that there are rules and boundaries set is because the man or the woman have to follow those obligations against their instinct, right?
Yes.
The human nature wants to sin.
Yes.
And the whole reason why we're on earth as a test is because we have to go against our nature, right? And then obey Allah. If everybody had the perfect instinct to follow Allah, then we would just be replaced by a creation that does sin.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it would be unfair of a woman to expect her man to be flawless right off the bat, right?
I agree.
But then he lost me at the very end.
Yeah.
Where he said, in an ideal scenario, I would reserve some money for ourselves and have her pay some amount. I would pay 60 or 70% of the bills and save the rest for like some sort of whatever he said, right? But that's, I mean, if she wants the husband to provide 100% of the bills, right? If he feels that he cannot do that unless he gets a second job or works 60 hours or more a week, then he has the right to move to an area in which they can live off of just his sole salary. Right? He can go anywhere in the world to make that possible. You know? So he has that power, and she has the obligation to have to follow him. So if she wants to marry him only if he has the natural instinct to want to pay 100% right off the bat, then he could also say, all right, well, do you have the natural instinct to immediately follow me wherever I move?
Yeah.
Right. And then it just becomes a war of attrition.
Yeah.
Right. Like it becomes a tug of war, and nobody has time for that.
Yeah. No, I agree pretty much with everything that you said, but I might have read it too fast. But towards the very end where he says, however, in the set scenario without obligations. So he's saying if there were no obligations, this is what I would want. But he's saying there are obligations, therefore that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to provide 100%.
Yeah, if there was no obligation, then he can ask.
Yeah.
He can say, hey, let's share our money. Let's pool our resources, right?
Yeah.
Instead of you just completely saving up all the money and using it for your purposes and your fun and whatever it is.
Yeah.
Let's pool the money together and make a better lifestyle for ourselves. And that way I don't have to work 2 jobs and I get time to see you and the children more.
Yeah.
Right? Like that would make sense.
I agree. And honestly, that brings to mind, so before I talk about from a religious aspect, as always, please remember that I am not a scholar. I'm not a student of knowledge. I'm just a regular person with a regular amount of knowledge. Take everything with a bucket of salt, right? That I say when it comes to Islam, right? But I remember reading that ayah in the Quran that says that man was created weak. And man was created weak. And there are multiple tafsirs. But one of the tafsirs that I came across said that this may mean that humanity, like man in terms of humanity doesn't have the ability to create a perfect system, right? Doesn't have the ability to create a perfect system that's going to work for everybody. That whatever system that we sit down and think up ourselves, you have all the philosophers coming up with different systems for how society should run. Whatever system we think of ourselves is going to be flawed. Yeah. So one of the mercy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us is that we don't have to think about everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to us. Yeah. So you have these rules, exactly like you said, that are in place. So to help people, especially when it comes to marriage, to give couples the best possible chance at succeeding, so that they don't have these issues, right? So given that, I agree with everything that you said. We don't have to guess. We just go with what is obligated, and it is a very good analogy, like an example, a good point where you said, whenever we go through the lists of what are the responsibilities or the obligations of women, among the first ones on that list is that the husband has a right that we obey him, right? Yeah. The husband has the right of obedience. Yeah. So you're right. He might ask the question of, well, do you have the obedience instinct? I know I definitely don't. This is something that I know I struggle with, and I know a lot of people struggle with. But again, this is something that we do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within reason. And the corollary of that is that you don't ask of me anything that's outside of my ability or unreasonable. Yeah. And that's why it's so important to choose a spouse who's not going to take advantage of that right. So in that same sense, for this brother, I would explain to the sister, it's unfair to expect that a person would have the instinct to fulfill all of these obligations. Yeah. However, all you can ask from a person is to do their best, within the bounds. And I would tell the brother that's why it's important that you choose somebody who's not going to take advantage of that right that she has upon you, right? And whenever it comes to couples or whenever it comes to clients asking me about, well, I can only provide this much, she has this much, how do we solve this? My advice is always to go with what you described. that the best way to understand finances is that the man will provide 100%, right? But he's the one who gets to decide where you're gonna, like, what he can provide within.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So let's say he's in the US and he has a salary of $3,000 a month, right? And that salary, he's going to tell you, these are the places that we can live based on my salary.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's going to be too difficult.
Inaccessible.
Exactly. And he's also going to be the one who decides, listen, I'm also still supporting my my mother, my father, my siblings. So a portion of my salary has to go to that.
Yeah.
And I also want a portion of my salary to go to these savings and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So he's going to outline that to you in the beginning, which is perfectly fair, because he understands what can be done within those means better than you can, right?
Exactly.
Because he's been doing that the whole time. So what our role becomes then, and from women, is to decide, okay, is what he presented that's within his means, is this something that I'm comfortable with, yes or no, right? And then you make your decision according to that. Practically, like, that's the general guideline. Practically, what will end up happening, or what it is that I guide clients to, especially single ones, is to be careful to choose someone who, above all else, wants you to be okay, who's interested in your well-being, and that includes your financial well-being.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that means it's important that, brothers, you choose somebody who wants you to be okay financially. So she might agree with or not agree with what you can provide. But she might say something like, well, I also work, right? If I were to contribute this much, how would you feel about upgrading to this lifestyle? And then he'll say yes or no.
Yeah.
And to also choose somebody who, God forbid, anything can happen. You can lose a job. Illness can happen. You might have to move. Like, there's an infinite number of things that can happen.
Yeah.
It's important to choose somebody who is invested in you for you. And not invested in what you can give them.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of tit for tat rhetoric that's out there. It's not useful. It's not practical. And to hold
most of all, it's not fun.
No, it's not. But honestly, it doesn't really help you make the right decision that you're looking for. If you choose somebody who outlines on a table, this is what I'm going to do, tit, that's what you're going to do for tat, that's not going to work. It's just not going to work.
That is a transactional relationship.
Exactly. It doesn't work. And usually whenever these conversations come up with that transactional framework, it's usually amongst the younger people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the first thing that we said here is that this gentleman, he's 23 years old, and this young lady is 24 years old. They're very young, right? They're very young. So it's like the things that we think are important when we're younger.
Yeah.
As you get older, you'll understand is not as important, or you'll understand that's not how the world works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem with a transactional relationship is that it is that tit for tat, right? They try to match the one with the other, and it ends up becoming zero sum in the end.
Yeah.
Right. So when you, as the husband or the wife, are sitting alone thinking, what has this person done for me? Everything cancels out and nothing comes to mind.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, I agree. There is a caveat to that, though, because you also don't want to be in a situation where you're being taken advantage of, right?
Yeah.
So another teaching of our religion is balance, right? That whenever you're looking for the right answer to a situation, the answer is usually somewhere in the middle, a balance of somewhere in the middle. So completely transactional is not a good idea.
Yeah.
And completely self-sacrificing is not a good idea.
Yeah.
The healthier relationship will be somewhere in the middle, and that will be with compromise.
Yeah.
With compromise. And that compromise is through a lens of rahmah. Granted, at the very beginning, the two of you are strangers. You might be in the honeymoon phase. You're in that infatuation phase of, I really like we spoke about this last episode. So in that honeymoon phase, it's a lot of, I really like how you meet my emotional needs, and I like you because of how you meet my emotional needs. So let's do more of that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a lot of that. But as you spend more time together, you're married longer, you have a shared history, and you start to progress through the other stages of the relationship, then this is when more rahma, mercy comes into play, where this person becomes a genuine family member.
Yeah.
Right? So if you think of the difference between your friend at work versus your sister.
Yeah.
The amount of rahma that you have for your friend at work might be huge, but it's not, it's not going to be compared to how you feel about your sister.
It's easy to pull pranks on your sister. Yeah.
So when you have for example, when you go out for dinner, you might be more conscious of who's paying.
Yeah.
When you're with your friend, you might be more conscious of, well, she paid last time, I have to pay this time, because there's things are a little bit more formal. But when you are with your sister, and you have this mercy and closeness between the two of you, it's you're a lot less conscious of that.
Yeah.
It's more a question of, well, who can pay?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So as you're married longer, when the bills come and the rent comes, it becomes less of a question of who paid last time, who paid this time, etc. It's more a question of who has it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I would pay.
Well, yes. Yeah. That's the default. But like I said, life lives.
Yeah, life lives.
Life lives. So it's not going to be roses all the time. Literally, a lot of different things can happen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us from them. But those things are going to require that you see this person, your spouse, as a family member, rather than like a friend from work.
Yeah.
It's like a formal situation. So that would be my advice to the sister, and to the advice to the brother.
Yeah.
So advice to the sister would be to explain, we can't expect that people are instinctively going to want to fulfill your obligations, because we're human.
Yeah.
Right. And to expect that from them means that they're going to expect that from you, and there's that's not. It's hard. It's hard for most people. I know I'm not a perfect woman. None of us are perfect women. It's difficult. So it's unfair to expect from them what you are not able to do. Yeah. That's the advice for the sister. And the advice for the brother is, make sure you choose someone who cares about your well-being, right? And your well-being encompasses your financial well-being. So then comes the question of, well, then how do you talk about financial compatibility?
Well, you spoke on balance earlier, right? I've been meaning to get around to it, but have you noticed all the seesaws in the rooms?
Is that why they're here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ever so often, I've just been installing seesaws in every room.
I mean, I saw them.
Yeah.
But I didn't see them.
It's to remind us to maintain balance in our life.
Okay, I see.
And okay. You saw, gotcha.
I did, yeah.
So if at any point in time you're feeling unbalanced, you just climb onto the seesaw, I'll balance you out on the other end.
On the other end?
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Well, that is definitely one of the methods. But again, I
think that's the fastest method to get balanced.
Honestly,
realistically speaking.
You just put all of your issues on one side and see what happens on the other side. All right. I think that's what happens on Judgment Day. But we're not going to go there. So financial compatibility. All right. So how do you actually talk about financial compatibility? This is something we talked about in one of the earlier episodes, right? Or we talk about money and marriage.
Yeah.
But more towards the talking stage. The questions that you're going to want answers to are going to be a little bit different than whether or not this person has a provider instinct, right?
Yeah.
So how would you approach that? Like if
about financials?
Yeah, like when let's say you and I just met.
Yeah.
And we're in the talking stage, and you want to know if I am financially compatible with you.
Yeah.
How are you going to assess that?
The first question I would ask is, what's wrong with your face?
Every time.
But then once we get past that, I'll be like, okay, financial wise, this is how much I make right now. I'm hoping to make more in the future, inshallah. But would you be comfortable living in so and so place until I can afford to live in so and so place?
That's beautiful. All right. So from the gentleman's end, definitely, that's absolutely beautiful. For both the men and the women. Most of my all of my clients are women. The only time I coach men is when they are with their wife, when I coach couples, right? But for both the men and the women, I always say that when you're assessing compatibility, most of the time, 90% of it will be through observation. So just by paying attention, right? So we reviewed this in a previous podcast, so I'll go through it quickly. So you pay attention to what a person says, what they think about, what a person says, how they spend their money, and how they spend their time.
Yeah.
Those three things will give you a pretty good indicator of where their personal values lie. So let's say that we went out, right? We bought a mahram and then we went outside somewhere. And you are assessing me.
Yeah.
So what you would pay attention to is when you asked, hey, where do you want to go out? You pay attention to which restaurant I choose.
Yeah.
And you pay attention to what it is that I order off the menu, because that'll give you an indicator of what I'm used to.
I'd also pay attention to like your facial language, like your body language.
Yeah.
If every time I try to talk, you grimace, I'd be like, okay, something's going on here. Something.
It's not ideal.
Something's happening.
It's not favorable. But alhamdulillah, that didn't happen.
It might literally just be the sparks.
The sparks?
Yeah, you might be flinching because of the sparks. Like, it hurts.
It's painful.
Yeah.
You know that happens all the time because for some reason they generate so much electricity.
You do shock me often.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
But okay, so you would pay attention to which restaurant, what I order off the menu, right? Just because there's a certain level of comfort, a certain level of expectation.
Yeah.
Also pay attention to like the clothes that I'm wearing. Pay attention to what I talk about. So, for example, if I talk about, my friends and I just went to this vacation. We just purchased this. We just purchased that. If I'm talking about a lot of material things that I might be more interested in, and things like that, and how I spend my time. Right. Yeah. So if you ask somebody, or, as you're getting to know them, you start to get a better idea of what their schedule is like and where they spend their time.
Yeah.
So if this person is often shopping or is on Amazon a lot, right? Online shopping or in-person shopping, then this can be an indicator that they have a higher expectation of the financial expectation that might not match up with yours.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So what a person talks about, how they spend their money or your money when you're with them, and where they spend their time, how they spend their time. Yeah. These will give you indicators of what the person values. So that would be the observation aspect of it. And 90% of your assessment is going to be through observation. Direct questions that you can ask, again, for both men and women, and I recommend that you ask these questions, are things like, what is your... Don't just, spring it on them. Just there are ways to bring up these topics. I talk about how to do it in the compatibility guide.
Yeah.
A PDF of it, which is available for free, you can find in the description below. But there's tact to it. But overall, what you want to end up knowing is, what is this person's credit score? Do they owe any money? Do they have any sort of debt? Do they have any plans to pay back that debt?
Yeah.
And some other questions, all of which are in the compatibility guide. But those are the types of things that you want to make sure you have answers to before you walk away. I remember there was one gentleman that I was with in the talking stage, and he told, later on, like after a month in, I ended up asking this question, and he told me he had a personal debt of $75,000, which is too big a number for me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because when you get married to somebody, their debt becomes your debt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an intimidating number. So these are things that you should talk about.
Exactly.
And that these are conversations you should have. I know that you and I had this conversation.
Yeah.
I had a lot more debt than you. But it was important to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you actually assess financial compatibility. We're only going through it quickly because we did a whole podcast episode, and a lot of what I'm saying is in the compatibility guide.
Mm-hmm.
Are we missing anything? I feel like I talked really fast.
No, that was beautifully said.
Okay.
That was wonderfully executed.
All right, I appreciate that. Jazaa K'Allah Khayr. So we covered it all. We're good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Jazaa K'Allah, if you have made it this far along with us, we really appreciate you wherever you are in the world. We see you, and we're honored that you spent this time with us. So Jazaa K'Allah Khayr.
Funny thing.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Do you remember the time I gave a shout out to Kimbawale?
Yes, this channel.
And then almost immediately afterwards, we started getting viewers from Nigeria.
Yes, we did.
That was amazing.
It was pretty cool. We had a number of viewers coming in. You know, I've been to Nigeria. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful country. We were in Abuja and in Lagos, and the food was amazing. And the people were so nice. Everybody's just positive. I really loved that.
In that same vein,
yeah.
Shout out to Muhammad.
Okay.
Because there's going to be Muhammad everywhere.
What about is there an initial after the Muhammad to differentiate? No, just Muhammad in general?
Yeah, you just get all the Muhammads.
Okay, all right. It's a shout out to every Muhammad. Jazakallah khair for spending that time with us. We appreciate it. And if we have said anything that makes sense or that you think is useful in this episode or any other episode and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really helps us out with our algorithm.
You should also comment. We have been getting some really nice comments.
People are very kind.
Very nice.
People are more brave to DM me than to comment, but we appreciate anything that you say. And finally, like I mentioned before, if you, especially for the young women, if you are in that process of searching for a spouse and you are wondering how to actually assess compatibility, that is not downloading 100 questions and asking them all in a row. I have created a compatibility guide just for you. It is in the description below, available for free. It's also on my Instagram page at Zahra Hassan Coaching. I think that is it. That's everything. So Jazakallah Khair, and Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.